This is music, and this is a fistful of metal. Welcome to another First Impressions video. In these videos, I share with you my first impressions of the many items I have blind bought over the last couple of years. I have a handful, 5 CDs to talk about today, so let's get down to business. Up first, Storm Death and their aptly titled Call of the Panzer Goat. A pretty funny cover artwork, I quite enjoy it. It reminds me a bit of the big gun, I would say, centric, ultra violent comic books of the 90s. There's a bit of a vibe that reminds me of that here. I also managed to listen to another Storm Death release, Time to Destroy. So a double whammy on Storm Death. And stylistically, to me, this is thrash metal, but with I guess slightly punky kind of undertones, and also a bit of a kind of filthy speed metal edge. Pretty good stuff, pretty enjoyable. I think if you like thrash metal in general, I think you will find this both of these, you will find them pretty nice listens. I quite enjoyed them. Up next, Trend, and it's not called Respect. It's called Bitch. These guys were huge in the underground scene of my birth town of Odense back in the 90s. Their shows were like regular, just parties. They would handcuff people to the stage and force them to drink vodka, and also it was crazy. Their musicianship was pretty impressive. Their drummer, this guy here, Tinker, was an amazing drummer. I think this guy is their bass player, very talented too. And they had a very talented guitarist as well, who left the band before they could release this album because he wanted to start his own business, as far as I remember. So this is not the OG lineup. Their style is a mix of groove metal and funk metal. And this album here is kind of a far cry from their heyday. There's one song called Respect that goes way back in their catalog, and there's another song called Womanizer AD, and there's kind of like an earlier version of that on one of the FU We're From Denmark compilations. But yeah, groove metal, funk metal. There's one riff, your typical 90s groove metal riff on here. You have some funky bass parts. You have some pretty cool riffs, but you also have some kind of naff stuff going on. The vocalist was super popular, his singing style back in the 90s. But listening back to it now, it gets a bit annoying. I mean, that's a kind of a style that fit well with the 90s machismo kind of thing, but it's kind of outdated. Some of the songs are not great. Some of the songs are pretty good, so it's kind of a mixed bag. There is a strange cover version of I Feel You on here. I don't even know what to make of that. It's a groove metal cover version of that song. Respect, that song is pretty well performed on this album too, I would say. The guitar tone is kind of crunchy, and the bass actually has a pretty cool tone too. So it's not a bad album, but it's a far cry from how awesome I remember these guys were back in the 90s. So there you go. If you come across a cheap copy of it and you like 90s metal, it doesn't hurt to pick it up, especially because they're from my birth town. Okay, up next, not a whole lot to show here, but that's because the Digipackage stored safely somewhere else. But this is Tsjuder, and Legion Helvete, so Norwegian black metal. I bought this one super cheap in Mephisto in that record store because the booklet was missing. So, got a super great deal on this. And I think I've heard this one before. I'm pretty certain, but it's been a while. So this is black metal, and I would consider it very almost like brutal black metal. You have lots of super fast, blast beaty parts. You have some very crunchy riffs. You also have your typical, tremolo picking and all that stuff. But what I like is, as part of all that stuff, they go into some really riffy parts and some really cool drum figures as well. So I would say this is pretty cool. I quite enjoy Tsjuder, especially Legion Helvete, and I quite like the guitar tone as well. I mean, it's black metal. Fans of black metal will probably enjoy this, but if you're into kind of other kind of extreme genres of metal, you might find this interesting too. There are places where it almost has a grindcore feel, just mildly, and there are also places where it's a bit more punky. So for my money, pretty damn good black metal release here. And up last, When Darkness Begins by Wardom, pretty neat mini album / EP here. I think it's officially a mini album. Australian metal, as far as I remember. So this is some of the songs are kind of thrashy. I Am the Wolf, the first one, is kind of like Motorhead-ish inspired. And then you have Ride the Demon Horse of Sodom, which is more of a straight up heavy metal song. So it's kind of in that neighborhood somewhere between Motorhead inspired thrashy stuff and like old school heavy metal. The vocals are, kind of harsh. They're not growled or shrieky or anything like that, but they're not. It's not clean singing. It's a pretty enjoyable listen, and something that's, if you just need a kick in the ass and you don't have a whole lot of time to listen to music, this is a good one to put on your stereo or however you play your music. So Wardom, When Darkness Begins. So there you go, a bit of a handful of metal. Thanks for watching.